everybody. Tyler Metalhead Weatherman here. Hopefully everyone's doing well and has had a good weekend. It's been a very interesting weekend for me traveling out of state. It was kind of an impromptu trip here, but it was interesting. It was pretty solid, I'd say. But between that, weather's still been ongoing. There's been a lot of interesting trends that I've seen in the long term here, so we're going to go ahead and get into that. Before I do that, of course, make sure you're smashing that like button, decimating that subscribe button, and obliterating that share button, because here we go. So the interesting thing to note, for one, is severe weather potential is going to be extremely limited, and that's going to be due to the upper level wind pattern. Really isn't going to allot for that Gulf of Mexico moisture to really kick in at this point. So we aren't going to have that little southwesterly flow here, or northerly flow that's just going to allow for those more moist dew points across parts of the southern and eastern U.S., which is really going to be the only place that would be open for shop right now as far as severe weather is concerned. It's due in large part mainly to the southeast ridge right now. So the way that's all set up, if we look at this right here, you can see potential too low is going to be running rampant all throughout the next 8 days here. So pretty quiet on the severe weather side of things. But one thing to make note of here is the fire weather. You actually have a couple of critical fire weather areas out west. We have a new ridge that is beginning to develop out here. So a shift is coming to where we're going to be dealing with yet another positive PNA setup. I've been saying for a couple of videos now, especially in the longer range outlooks and forecasts, that we can expect an increase in temperatures over here out west. Pattern is going to flip. And as a result, unfortunately, with the combination of drier conditions and also increasing winds here, the fire threat is increasing as well. So just really for these areas, it's not anything too new. It's more or less just trying to do exactly what you've been doing before over these areas during the summer. Just try to be conscientious of burning any sort of materials, whether it's trash, leaves, whatever you may. But over the next couple of days, the threat is pretty high, but predictability too low exists through a good portion of the week ahead here. There is also the threat of dry thunderstorms, albeit the probability is too low as of right now. So we'll have to still be keeping a close eye on these regions here, but maybe in the coming days here, we'll start to see an increase in moisture out west while we start to go through that pattern flip. That being said, taking a look at the upper level winds, we're starting out with the Euro first. You can see where we are currently. Here's where the trough is right here. You can clearly see it there, and then you can see the ridging kind of taking place here. It's starting to weaken, so this is also another tell that our pattern is beginning to change. But as we continue to go forward here, if I can get this to go, there we go. If we can get this going here, we can start to see that ridging starting to build back out west, and then of course the amplitude of the trough beginning to change. We'll probably start to see the potential for maybe a couple of winter storms coming into play here. Cold air starting to funnel in from Canada once again, and as a result, we'll start to see an increase in weather activity over towards especially the Great Lakes right now. As time goes on, we start to see a little bit more amplitude in the trough here, and then once we get towards the middle of the month, we start to see the trough really begin to dig in here across the eastern half of the U.S., which is pretty much solidifying the pattern flip, especially as we go towards mid-month. The Euro kind of has this going a little bit more zonal as we head to the end of this 10-day period here. But depending on how things play out here, if we get any sort of ridging, any sort of warm air that can get in, any sort of moisture, there could be some interesting stuff ahead. But right now, I think probability of that is still going to be low at this time. Middle of the month is going to be a lot more interesting. GFS shows a little something a little bit different here, but for the most part, we start out trending the same. We also have to watch the tropics over here towards this part of the Atlantic here. I do think because of the way that we are set up right now with our jet stream, or at the upper levels here, especially the polar jet, that for the most part, anything that would develop out here towards the Atlantic would just get kicked out to sea. It's really this area right here, this little strait between southern Mexico, southern Central America, and in between Cuba, where we would have to still watch for any sort of tropical development. Wind shear probably will still be a problem here, so as a result, I don't expect anything significant to develop here, but still something worth watching. Remember, like I said before, hurricane season's done at the end of November. As we continue to go forward here, pretty much the same trend as I mentioned before. That subtropical jet is a little bit more prevalent here in the in this run here versus what we were seeing with the Euro. And this could also help cool the temperatures off towards the south. And then here comes that trough that we were talking about starting to come into play. It kicks in, it starts to really dig over towards this point. If things progress in a particular manner, this was past the 10-day period of the Euro, by the way, so still a lot of uncertainty with this, but if this were to come into play here, we could get some lower level moisture coming in. There could be a couple opportunities for severe weather, especially as we head towards maybe the 9th or the 10th. Then as time goes on here, we'll see this roll on out of here. Some ridging begins to come back into play here as we head towards the middle of the month, so we could be dealing with a pretty flip-floppy type of month here, where we start to see multiple changes coming into play here. We could see multiple frontal systems, storm systems, which would cause an increase in the shower and storm activity for a large portion of the eastern U.S. as well as the western, really, at this point, because you can see at the end of this run here a little bit of a trough coming in, especially towards the northwest, so you can expect an increase of activity over here towards Washington, Oregon, and others. So plenty to keep an eye on here. When we look at the mid levels of the atmosphere, which is important to kind of find congruence between these two levels, it looks pretty similar here. And this is also kind of where you can get a little bit of a tell as far as the storm systems are concerned. This storm system I'm watching pretty closely over here as we look towards the morning of Halloween. If this can get itself together, we could see some snow towards the Great Lakes, maybe even sneaking into Ohio, Indiana. But I don't think we'll get enough moisture wrapping around the backside of this in time. Not to mention the timing of the cold air coming into play is still questionable as well. But this will undoubtedly bring a little bit more cooler air into play over here, especially towards the northeast and parts even the mid-Atlantic here. And then as time goes on, we continue to see a couple other small, weaker systems. I wouldn't expect anything major to come into play here from the Euro until we get towards, let's say, November 6th. This kind of has an interesting look to it. Could be a Gulf Coast severe scenario, if anything. I think that the chances are still low, but it might need to be something that I monitor a little bit more closely. Here will be undoubtedly a frontal boundary that comes into play around the 7th, so I think shower and storm activity could be possible over here towards the southeast through a good chunk of Tuesday. Then as we go through Wednesday here, and start out with Wednesday, I should say, we see that cold air kind of lingering here, but ridging may start to rebuild as we head closer towards the 10th here, so it'll be interesting to see how things play out. And also, this is right around the time of my birthday, big 29. We look at the GFS. It's a pretty similar look starting out, but it's really once we get past that 10-day mark where things get a little bit more interesting. See, here's our ridge. Here's that storm system I'm watching. Takes a little bit more of a neutral tilt orientation here on the GFS versus the Euro here. Euro kind of has it more than a positive slope. What I mean by positive slope, by the way, is if it's kind of pointed this way, it kind of has this orientation. It's a positive tilt. I know the line is a little bad, but a negative tilt would have the storm kind of pointed more this way, where the trough would be kind of like this. This might be a little bit extreme as far as the negative tilt's concerned, but nonetheless here, it's definitely something. Whenever you see that negative tilt, that's usually a bad sign. You could get a pretty strong storm out of that, albeit severe weather, be it severe weather or winter weather. But in any case here, we continue to go forward on this run. We can of course see that trough starting to build back into play here across the eastern half of the U.S., especially as we get towards the 5th. It becomes a lot more prevalent after the 8th. And then as we go into the 9th and beyond, that's when we start to get that really stout storm system that I'm going to be watching a little bit more closely, especially as we look over towards the Gulf Coast states. After that, a big pattern change will probably start to take place here, and then after a while we'll start to get into a little bit more of an unstable pattern where I think showers and storm activity will be on the rise. So we'll kind of hone in on that a little bit more as time goes on. Also, with the threat of winter storms, this is also something I like to look at here, is the relative vorticity. Doesn't always give you a great indicator of storm potential, but usually with the more vorticity, usually it's a good indicator of a stronger storm. And this is also why I kind of have a little bit of doubt with this system and a little uncertainty, because you do see a decent bit of vorticity. Moisture to me is the real question here. If we can get any good moisture to fall in around the backside of this, we could see some decent snow here. We'll look into this more tomorrow, of course, especially with Halloween on the horizon as well, or pretty much right upon us. And then, of course, as time goes on, things look kind of zonal right now. And then as we continue to go forward through the next few days here, we're moving a little slow. We start to see a slightly stronger storm system come into play, but the cold air doesn't really seem to be there at this point. So over the course of the next week, we look like we might be relatively quiet starting out. But of course, as we get closer towards the 8th of November, that's when we have to start paying a little bit more attention. Like I said, cold air doesn't really seem like it's going to build in until later on down the line here. So it's just going to be a bit beyond what we were seeing with the Euro here. We're looking at the GFS at this point, and here's that much stronger storm system. And this is where I think the potential of severe weather comes into play. This is a little bit better indicator right here. You can see this little area has my interest just a little bit here. Moisture return, of course, is going to be the key question for me on that. And then instability as well. If we can get decent instability and a good moisture return, we could be talking severe weather across southern Alabama, maybe also towards Mississippi and Louisiana. So let's continue to drag that on. Storm system really starts to ramp up at this point. And it's not enough cold air to really make me think this would have snow behind it, so I'm not super concerned. But this could become a coastal storm, maybe even a nor'easter. But of course, that depends on how the system trends with its cold air, of course. So we continue to go forward here, and I cannot get this to go very fast. We can start to see a couple other storm systems coming into play here. Cold air not really a factor at this one, but could cause more unstable weather, maybe a slight chance of severe weather towards the end of this run here. But with us being this far out, confidence in that is pretty low. And here's the Euro. I don't know why the order got switched up. I always try to have it to where Euro is a little bit, I have the Euro in front of GFS. That's my mistake though. So an interesting thing to note with Euro here, this storm system is a little colder. So like I said, really it's going to be all about moisture. If we get moisture wrapping around the backside of this, greater potential for some snow, maybe even some bigger totals here. So definitely something to keep an eye on there. Be interesting to see how the models trend with this over the next day or so in particular. Of course, we get zonal, we get a little bit more quiet as time goes on. More likely to see a couple of isolated showers here and there, maybe slight chance of thunderstorms. And as time goes on, here is a better look at our model data here. Slightly more stout storm system as we head before the 8th. It's really going to be the one after that that really kind of gets my attention here. So timing and discrepancy between the models definitely coming into play here for sure. If we were to look at the air masses, another good way of looking at winter storm and severe potential as well throughout this time of year. Here's that cold air mass hanging out more so towards the northern states. Really starts to deepen around Halloween day, and then into Halloween night this really starts to ramp up. I think that like I said, Ohio Valley may see some snow wrapping around the backside of this. And then as we continue to go forward here, warm air starts to take over briefly, and then after a while the cold air is going to come in right behind that, and a more stout trough will build up. This is that storm, one of those first of two storm systems that I'm really interested in at this point. Here's that first one, and then that little second shot that's going to be coming in from the GFS after this point is what's really going to pique my interest more so than anything else. Here we are towards the third again, looking pretty congruent at this point. And then as we go from the 7th onward, and here's something else that I'm watching, of course, too. It's the tropics. Something tries to develop towards that strait that I was talking about earlier, we definitely need to be paying extra close attention to that. And I will be probably making a tropical update today and or tomorrow. Well, tomorrow and or Tuesday, I should say. But here's that first storm system coming through. That second one, a little bit more stout. I'm a little concerned maybe about the potential of a trough ejection, but right now it's not very clear on this run. We'll have to see how this trends out. I'm kind of leaning right now towards it not holding up. But interesting thing to note, there is a slight negative orientation with this coming into play here. A little bit of a neutral negative, maybe negative tilt. Kind of hard to say. I'm reaching right now because of how far out we are at this point. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But I'm definitely watching the coastal areas, especially towards New England, as we go on through this run here. Fortunately, this isn't a long-lasting setup here, so not too concerned about the lasting effects. I think if anything does happen winter-wise, it's not going to linger for very long. It's going to be a fast mover. So this is what we're looking at pretty much as far as the upper to mid levels of the atmosphere as far as the setup's concerned. But the real effect, regardless of whether you get a storm system or not, it's definitely going to be the temperatures. You're going to notice quite a difference here. You're going to see the difference really begin to show more so from like the 3rd onward, especially towards the morning hours where we start to see those 30s creeping back into the picture, even towards the Appalachia and throughout parts of the Midwest here. Get ready to get those jackets back out over towards the eastern half of the U.S. because we've been warm for a bit now, but we're going to start to feel the effects of fall and even a little taste of winter here and there. Still getting pretty warm at times. We're sitting a little bit more towards average as we go through the 10-day period here. We go towards GFS, we'll start to be able to look a little further here. I'll let you see from the beginning, of course. Excuse me. But in regards to what our temperatures are looking like as that front passes through, heading into Tuesday and then Wednesday, of course, we're going to start to see those temperatures drop off. GFS looks a little bit colder initially on this compared to the Euro, but over the next few days, that cold air is really going to start to take over as we get closer towards the middle of the month. We aren't quite able to get all the way to the 15th, but as we were talking about, around between the 8th and the 10th is when that trough really starts to dig in, and those temperatures are really going to start to take a little bit of a nosedive here. Right around the 14th is when we start to see a little bit of ridging coming into play, so a little bit questionable as to what happens next here. Looking at moisture returns is going to be another thing. Like I said, I think this is going to be a key component to potential severe weather down the line here. And as you can see, really, with that ridge setup right here, we don't really see much in the way of moisture. In fact, it's pretty dry even across the east. This is the driest I've seen this area this year, where we've been dealing with dew points now in the 20s and 30s. Throughout the year, we've been dealing with 60, 70, some places even 80-degree dew points. And to see things kind of dropping off right now is kind of nice. I'm not going to lie, especially since I work outside. But as time goes on through the 3rd, I'm seeing a little bit of a moisture return coming into play. It's not a very impressive one, but down the line, this could allot for severe weather potential, albeit still, like I said, mainly going to be favoring towards the Gulf Coast states. Then as we go towards the 8th, we start to see that front move out, and then a little bit of a moisture return tries to come back into play around the 8th. And really looking at the GFS is what's going to be a determining factor as to what could happen after that. Of course, as we know, this change is run by run, so can't put a lot of merit into this just yet. But from what I can see here, we do get a little bit better moisture return from the GFS, so there's still potential, albeit it's really not going to become as apparent until we get towards the 9th and into the 10th here. The 9th looks a little bit more stout, getting into those 60s, even those mid 60-degree dew points coming into play here. Depending on the large scale ascent here will be a big factor as to what kind of severe weather we could potentially see. But of course, we're past the 10-day period, so very uncertain at this point still. South Georgia might need to be on the lookout as well. Of course, we'll be keeping track of that. And then as time goes on, as that front passes, we have that moisture drop off once again. And also with the cold air coming into play, the dew points will also drop off further as well. We get towards the end of the model run here. Not surprised to see the moisture return in Texas. Combined with any sort of large scale ascent could increase the chance of severe weather. But like I said, pretty far out at this time. Let's go ahead and look at the flash density model from the Euro here. This is going to kind of give us a good indicator of what our thunderstorm potential could be like over the next 10 days. And for the most part, we're going to probably be quiet throughout a good chunk of this run here. It's really not going to be until the end of it where we start to see a little activity. And there you go. Right towards the Midwest here, around the 6th, is where we can see some increase in shower and storm activity. Not much in the way of lightning flash density. No real surprise there. Not much. During this time of year, you often struggle to get instability, so this isn't surprising to me in the slightest, especially as we start to cool off. You end up having a higher shear, lower cape events. So looking at precipitation as a whole, especially from the Euro, you're going to start to see an increase in snow here as time goes on, especially towards these northern states. Here's that storm system I've been looking out for. See an increase in shower and storm activity over towards the eastern half of the U.S., but here's that storm system trying to deepen. Doesn't really get a lot of moisture around the back side of it, mainly because of that positive tilt orientation there. But as time goes on, we get another system that comes in here, bringing in increased shower and storm activity towards the northwest. It's kind of what we were anticipating there. And then this next storm system is kind of what piques my interest a little bit more. Get some cold air wrap around the back side of that, we could get an increase in snow there. So it's still pretty variable as far as going past 5 to 6 days at this point. Here's some increased activity over here off the southeast coast here. And then as time goes on, as we start to get more towards that ridge here, we start to see that warm air coming into play, shower and storm activity. This is going to definitely be indicative of a cold front here, a fast moving one at that. But like I said, really dependent on what this storm system does. We could get a little bit of wraparound on the backside of this. We do have the cold air present. The moisture is the big question here. If this ends up coming into play, taking any sort of slightly negative tilt here, we could see a decent little puff of or burst of snow over here towards the northeast, especially towards New England. But like I said, we're still pretty far out at this point. GFS is going to give you a little bit different of a look here. And if we were to take a look at that map right now, the GFS gives this storm system a little bit better chance. It's a little bit stronger, but cold air's lagging a little bit too far behind on this. Whereas we also get to see that little tropical system come into play here. It may brush Florida, may not. We'll have to see how this develops. We'll get a better look at that tomorrow. And then as time goes on here, we do get a little bit of remnant moisture on the backside of this system here. And as a result, we could see a little burst of snow over here towards Pennsylvania and New York. We also see this really stout storm system head over towards the southeast, especially towards the Gulf Coast states. Could have potential for severe weather. This ends up getting a lot stronger. Cold air makes it in time, and as a result, could see significantly higher snowfall totals. But of course, look how far out we are. This is bound to probably change here. If this trend holds up, though, we could see New York City, Philadelphia, and others, Boston, seeing the potential for some snow here. So right around this is right about at schedule for you guys. Not surprising to see this in November, but this will be a quick mover. Before we know it, we'll start to warm back up. Probably we'll have snow on the ground for a couple of days if this holds up, and then after that we kind of calm down in the meantime until the next setup towards the middle of the month. No, this was a long video, guys. I apologize for that, but during the winter, a lot of different things come into play here. A lot of different types of weather to cover here. So just look at the timestamps and you'll find the type of weather that you're looking for. For the most part, it's still going to be rather calm, I would say, starting out. But as we get further into November, things could begin to change here. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys hit that like button, smash that subscribe button, and obliterate that share button. Get that bell on too, so that way you can get notifications for every video. That being said, I hope you guys enjoyed. Hope you have a good rest of your weekend. It's been Tyler, Metalhead Weatherman. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.